Hey, fellow readers, guess what? My name is Chris Jagger, and I have a special guest today. Somebody that just kind of popped in and decided that she wanted to come visit the bookstore for a little while. Jaime Jo Wright has a new book coming out in June called The Cliffs of Foxglove Manor. Sorry, Jamie,
That's all right.
keep that up every time. I keep wanting to say Foxmoor.
Oh,
I don't know
that
why.
sounds cool.
Okay,
I'm
we'll
good
go with
with
that. But anyway, so we're going to talk about her new book that you can pre-order on bakerbookhouse.com, and you can look it up there. It's 40% off and free shipping right now. So make sure you get your pre-orders in soon. So tell us about the book. I know it's set by Lake Superior.
Lake Superior, yes. I had to finally go to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Yay.
Too many Michiganders? Is that
Yes.
Michiganders?
Yes.
Michiganders.
Michiganders.
Yes. Okay. We're wanting a Michigan book.
Yes.
And I actually grew up going to Lake Superior, the UP. We've
Oh,
been
sure.
vacationing there every summer. So love it up there. And the book was actually really inspired by my daughter.
Really?
Because she was on a binge watch of The Search for Civil War Gold on the History Channel.
I've seen the show. I haven't
Yeah.
watched the show.
And so she told me I needed to write a treasure hunt book, which I was like, okay, that would sort of fit the genre. Okay, I can see where this is going to go. Well, then I actually started studying the Civil War and was stunned to find out how much history is in the Great Lakes. And it just took me down rabbit trail after rabbit trail. And so On the Cliffs of Foxglove Manor was born with some really great secrets about the Civil War.
Yeah.
So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a Civil War book. If you're, if somebody's wanting
Right.
to read a Civil War book, it's not that. But it's got threads of that through as people are searching for lost booty from the war and this house that's got lots of secrets. We always have to have a house with secrets.
I know. That seems to be one small theme for you.
One
that-
small thing.
Yeah, your
Yeah,
houses
I
are
didn't do the
little-
house on Foxglove Manor.
No,
I
that's
changed
true.
it to the cliffs.
Yeah.
We had to get a little bit creative, but
I have to tell you too, when I was reading it, it would, like you said, there's so much history in the Great Lakes about the Civil War, and I had no clue.
I didn't either.
And then the pirate thing.
Right. The pirates of the Great Lakes, specifically Lake Superior.
That just blows me
I
away.
know, it's so much fun to read about them. They were such horrible people. I don't know why I'm fascinated by horrible villainous people.
No, it
But-
is a little scary.
Yeah, I'm disturbed.
Okay.
Okay, but we always have to have a little bit of a deviant mind if you're gonna write books like this. But no, so it's fascinating with the Civil War, and you would assume right away that it's Union.
Yeah.
But so much of the Great Lakes history is actually for the Confederacy.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, it's very intriguing to me, and it blew me away. I had to actually check a whole bunch of different sources to make sure, because I was sure it was right. Like, is this actually
Yeah.
true historical fact, or is this just legend that it happened? And I think there's a little bit of both.
Okay.
But because the Confederacy in the Great Lakes area was such a subversive, mysterious community that was kept under wraps, there really isn't a lot of factual information that's
Right.
necessarily out there.
Awesome.
So that made it really fun to write the book with a cooped up, mysterious war hero who's brooding and everything Rochester from Jane Eyre.
Yeah.
I had to go there in one book. I had to write a Rochester type.
Yes, I did like him. So, actually, to be honest with you, the characters are fabulous because there are parts of this book, and I've read them all, and you can read them all individually. They're not in
Yeah,
series, so
correct.
that I appreciate.
Yes.
Love my series, but individual, especially mysteries. I think there's something about that where it's kind of wrapped up.
It is. It's wrapped up, and I don't think anybody wants a mystery stretching over
7 books.
7 books.
Yeah,
It's
I
hard
don't
to,
know.
especially when
It's
you have to
hard
wait
to
a year
do.
between each
Yeah.
one.
Yes,
You have
yes.
to go back and read the
Who are
first
these
one.
people and why are they in here? So, but now I lost my train of thought, which does happen to me. I don't know why.
Oh, it
So,
happens to me often.
but there's also a contemporary story.
Yes.
So you tie that very well in together, but you also, and you've done this in other of your books where and I'm not even sure I know the complete PC way to say it, but special needs.
Yes.
This one is an autistic young man, and which I actually found fascinating because you have to think that through all the time
Mhm.
when you have somebody that you're the primary caregiver for.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Jude's character in this book was really a special character to me. I've worked with several young men who have autism,
okay.
and one in particular I worked with from 6th grade all the way up through high school and into his college years. And so I have a deep fondness for how they bring such a special, unique outlook and perspective into life that we don't always see. And I think they're very often, unfortunately, misunderstood. Or underestimated for how much they can contribute. So it was so fun to write a character that really without the story wouldn't exist.
And that's true.
Because Jude is so pivotal to linking it all together, and his mind is what really creates the crux of the solutions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and you included a cat.
Of course.
Of course.
Edgar
So
and Poe.
I'm working on getting her to include dogs.
I did in the house on Foster Hill.
That's true. That's true. He was a very minor part, you know.
And Haunting Upon Adventure Circus had
An elephant, which was.
and they also had the dog. Had the
That's right. I
hippo.
forgot about him.
Yeah,
You're right.
but he didn't really have he was kind of a cameo. So
Yeah, that's true.
I'll
But I
work
did
on-
like
I'll work on
Lily.
it for
I
you.
did like Lily the elephant.
yes,
So,
yes.
you know, so I do appreciate the animals, but we're working on more of a big part for a dog.
Well, I'll work on that on the next one. Dogs.
Dogs.
Specific breed.
Mutt.
A mutt. Oh, I love mutts.
Okay,
Oh,
so
mutt.
anyways, now
Yeah.
back to here. So,
Yes.
so I gotta ask, because you did such a great job of describing this manor.
Okay.
Is there a house like this on these cliffs? You
No.
totally, see, that blows me away. I can't, authors, all of you always amaze me when I have a part of a book where they're like, oh no, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, but the honestly though, the cliffs, and even as seen on the cover of the book, those are
Yeah.
very prevalent in the area, and you will see little houses or lighthouses or things that are built on the cliffs. The specific stone fashion of this manor, really, I sort of stole from England.
Sure, why
I just
not?
thought, sure, let's just build a house out of stone and put it on a cliff in Lake
Yes,
Superior.
because houses out of stone where it gets below 20 all the time, it's wonderful.
It is. It's very warm,
Yes, cozy even.
insulated, especially when it's with salt.
There's no salt in Salt Lake City, or in Lake Superior. There's a lot of salt in Salt Lake
There's
City.
the salt rock though.
Oh, that's right. It's been a while since I've been to UP.
These are the things you have to study
Mm.
when you do the research, is like, what kind of rock is that?
Yes.
Because if you say granite, which is your typical go-to,
Oh, yeah.
it's not necessarily right.
Oh.
And you will
would
get
be.
caught.
Yes. Those readers.
No, you guys are good.
Yeah.
You are good.
Sometimes she makes mistakes in them just to see if you
I
catch
do.
them.
They're called Easter eggs. They're very purposeful.
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
because we would
I
never.
plan those. I have a journal of all the mistakes I'm going to plant. My novels.
She's scarier than I thought, just to let you all know.
Like
So,
I said, deviant minds.
yes. So I always ask, well, and some of this we'll get into what
Sure.
you're working on next in a few
Yes.
minutes, but is there one of these that you like really think that's my favorite?
Favorite child, huh?
Yeah,
where we're
I
going?
know. I have to ask because they'll ask. They
No,
always do.
yeah, it's true. It's true. Probably Curse of Misty Wayfarer is my favorite.
Okay.
Partially because it was really hard to write. So I would say this was the one I was most emotionally invested in.
Okay.
So that's probably why it consistently clicks with me, because it was an emotional book when you're exploring mental illness and
It
you're
is.
exploring the history of the treatment and the type of people that were considered mentally ill,
Okay.
when it was simply a panic attack or it was depression because they were widowed,
Right.
and those types of scenarios where it kind of goes with that stigma of mental illness where people are kind of, they either feel criticized or they're criticized or they're told they're lacking in faith or something like that, and you struggle to be strong
Right.
when it's just not in you to be strong. And so it was hard to write. And then this was also, I was just finishing this up when I was going through my own health issues, which somehow correlated to what this was going on. So it was a really weird situation and time frame. But I was like, Lord, why are you giving me this theme because
Yeah.
I'm not liking where this is gonna go.
Yeah, I can
But-
see that. And reading it, you can see some of that emotion in there for
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
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 So,
So that one's really emotional. This one, The Reckoning at Cosmic Pond,
yes.
I call this my forgotten child.
Yeah.
It's like, you have all your books and I'm stroking it
Yeah.
because it needs love. No,
So order a copy
order
today.
a copy of The Reckoning at Cosmic Pond. It needs love. Love me, love me, love me. No, but I really like this book because it's based off of this ridiculous story that happened in my hometown of
I
twin.
didn't know that.
Yeah, the twin evangelists in this book. They're totally different names, but there were twin evangelists that came to my town and set up tent revival meetings. But they rabble roused, and their approach to evangelism was not honestly not short of holding a gun to somebody's head and saying, let's see where you're going.
Isn't that amazing?
And that's how they were just so people either loved them or they hated the brothers.
Yeah.
And so some of the things in here, like the skunk getting thrown into the church,
Oh, yes.
that happened.
Oh.
That's real. That
That's
actually
awesome.
happened. And the I can't remember what they call them, but that they had, it's not really a real person, but they had him hanging in the
The effigy.
yeah, that really happened.
Really?
Yes. And then there's one scene in here where one of the brothers threatens to blow his brains out.
Yep.
And that really happened. So I like this one because it's probably the closest I've ever gotten to actually kind of basing a story on real history,
Awesome.
like on actual events. And I don't think I've really emphasized that much with this book.
Yeah.
But I love it. I just love the fact that they're in there and they're just so weird.
Yeah.
They're really weird.
They are. I think that's probably why that disturbed me the most, is that there was somebody that people would admire or look up to
Yeah.
for their salvation, to learn about it, and then they were evil.
Well, and what's interesting is when you study the rise and the growth of churches in our community, it grew exponentially. Their ministry was ridiculously effective, and it was lasting, because when they finally got kicked out of town, literally kicked out of town, they moved to Chicago and disappeared. It kept growing.
Isn't that
It
interesting?
did. You didn't have this massive decline or this, oh yeah, there were a bunch of frauds or
Yeah,
anything.
and then they left the church.
Right. No, the churches that they helped found, the people who were saved in their tent meetings actually were saved. And it really
I love that.
made a huge impact. So it kind of goes to show too, like where there's a scripture where Paul talks about, some people may not be, I'm paraphrasing horrendously, but they may not be followers of the Lord, but the Lord can still use them and make them effective. And so I just like that part about this one.
Yeah.
But I've gotten a lot more criticism on this one from readers who aren't believers, because this one is more of a religiously based. There's a lot of religion in it versus
but
some of the
that
other books.
fits the story. I mean,
Mhm.
you're writing about evangelists, it's going to be in there.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
So.
But, no, I would probably agree. I have to admit, one of my favorites. This one is pretty close, but The House on Foster Hill. Partly because it was your first one.
Right.
It was like, somebody new in the market,
Right.
doing something very different.
Very different. Yeah.
So I have to admit that one, but I've enjoyed them all. They're all fun to read. I will agree with their assessment of Misty, with it being about mental illness.
Mhm.
That was a tough one to read.
It's a tough one to read.
Yeah.
It is. And I think I found that people are reading it more for the concepts in the book than the entertainment.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
it does.
So the ones that are really love this book, love it because of that mental illness, the way that we talk about anxieties and different things that really aren't talked enough about.
Right.
But yeah, it can be a tough read. This was just a fun read. I like The Haunting of Bonaventure Circus, was just your all out fun.
Yeah, it makes you more afraid of clowns. It's perfect.
I did I have a clown in it?
I think there was only one, but it wasn't a bad part.
No, the clown,
It just made
no.
me giggle
Yeah.
because most people, I don't go to circuses because I'm afraid of
Because of
clowns.
clowns,
and it's like-
right.
So, but I did like the baby elephant. I don't need to rehash that, but
Yeah.
I thought
Lily-
that was
Lily
really a
fun.
neat part of the story too.
Well, and it's sort of based off historical fact from the sense that the circus, the Ringling Brothers Circus, which this is loosely based off of because I live in the town where Ringling Brothers
Yeah, which
started.
I found fascinating.
Yeah. Most people associate the Ringling Brothers with Sarasota, Florida, because that's where they really ended up building a home base later on. But they were born, raised, and started in the Wisconsin area.
No
And
idea.
so the town that I live in, we call Ringlingville. It's not the name, but that's what we call it. There's circus stuff everywhere. Everywhere you go, there's elephants engraved in the sidewalks. Our downtown square, they used to bring the elephants up and walk around the square to exercise them during the winter. There's a story of an older woman in like 1905. She went out to use, she was in her 80s, and it was January, February, so it was cold. She went out to use the privy, otherwise known as an outhouse. And she opens the door, and there's a snake, a python. It
Oh,
had
no.
escaped for quite some time. They haven't been able to find it, curled up on the seat. And then there was another story of the panther that escaped, and somehow these animals seem to target old women. I don't know. Maybe
They're
they,
easy
maybe they
targets.
collaborated. But she beated. There's a word for her.
She's making up new words now.
I am. You know, I'm effectively working on changing the dictionary. She beat the Black Panther off her porch with a broom. This is how
Of course,
used
that's
to.
what you do.
This is what you're used to when you live in a town with wild animals. You're
Right.
like, it's not like, oh my gosh, there's a panther on my porch. It's like, get off the porch, cat.
And animals should learn, do not pick on 80-year-old
No,
women.
they're
They are
dangerous.
tough cookies, man.
Really. And
I've run
there's
into a few.
stories of farmers finding snakes in their manure piles in the spring.
Ugh.
Because if they'd escaped from the circus, which apparently they had an issue with. Because it
That would
happened
make
more
me
than
have to move
once.
out of town immediately. Yes.
Yeah, but you know, like big, I mean, we're talking massive snakes in the manure
Ugh.
pile. So yeah, so anyway, that was a fun. I was going somewhere with that, and I don't know where I was going, but we went.
She
to a
does
different
have
place.
some really good videos on her website, which is what, Jaime Jo?
Jaime Wright Books.
That's what it is. And you can go there. She does wonderful tours of the different things in the area, which actually are some of the buildings
Mhm.
that she used and described in the book. So,
Right.
and just a fascinating thing, because again, I had no idea that they started in Wisconsin. I always associated them with Florida, and I figured
Right.
that's where the circus had started. So
And that's
I
why
like
I
that.
also gave the circus a different name, Bonaventure Circus, solely because I would have been skewered alive.
Yeah.
As a native of the community, if I had any errors, any wrong facts or anything. It's a very precious part of our history.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to mess with actual history, so I based some things off of that. But
Yeah.
you know, that's the other part of the circus too that people aren't usually aware of is the wintering of the circus
Oh,
trains,
sure.
because you'd have the circus trains that would go across the nation.
Yes. remember
But
that.
they would retire for the winter. Of course, you go to Wisconsin to do that.
Because it's very warm.
Let's pause and
Wisconsin is
think about
not at
this.
all like Michigan. It's
Let's
always
take
balmy.
the elephants to Wisconsin, and so they would
And
keep.
the snakes. It turns
Yeah, they're
out.
just snakes. Well, the snakes were fine. They found the manure piles,
Yeah.
but the rest of the animals were in these buildings, and they had to heat them with massive amounts of coal, and so
Isn't
there was
that
coal
crazy?
burning in the sky all the time, and it's a crazy history.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun.
It's so much fun.
Well, there you go. So let me ask.
Yes.
You've been working on something new. Can you tell us a little bit about it? I know
Yes.
sometimes with titles and stuff, you're not always allowed to release the name, but
We did just settle on a name.
yeah.
I
Can you
haven't
share
really
it?
made it super formal. I've
Okay.
kind of, well, no, I shared it like in a blip online, and a few people caught it. I just wanted to see how many would catch it. I was surprised how many didn't.
They're sharp. They're a sharp group out there. Those.
Yeah, but I didn't do any big splash, but the new title is The Souls of Lost Lake,
Oh, and set in what state?
Wisconsin. I
Wisconsin.
went back to Wisconsin.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well,
Sorry,
all
y'all.
right. So that's where she's from.
It's where I'm from.
It's easier to write your neighborhood.
It is. This is in the northern, this kind of takes place in the northern woods like Person
Okay.
Misty Wayfair does.
Yeah.
And basically the gist is, here's your hook. What happens if a campfire ghost story actually comes alive?
Oh, well, I don't like camping, so I'll be good. But those of you that like to go camping, good luck.
Because if you think about it, we'd like to tell ghost stories around the campfire, and we're always like, oh, did that really happen? And so the story goes back to what really happened with the ghost story, and then how that affects today and the people in it. And yeah, I actually just finished writing it last week.
Oh, awesome. And it's due out in 2022?
2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because this
so-
is due in June of
Right.
2021.
Right. So the Souls of Lost Lake is coming. I think it's the first quarter.
Okay.
I don't
that would
have an
make
exact
sense.
release date,
Yeah.
but somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a fun one to write. It was
It
based
sounds
off
like a good one. That
it's
already-
based off a real ghost story that my husband always told at his camp. So the main
Awesome.
setting is a Bible camp.
Oh, perfect.
So I was trying to find like creative weird settings.
Is it
we
one of
don't
those
write
where the
about.
teenagers know where the murder is, so they run upstairs so the murderer
Oh, of
can
course,
trap them?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. In fact, my husband was telling me some crazy stories. And this one has nothing to do with the book, but they used to tell the story of this old man who would steal people in the woods, and he would do this for years and years and years because apparently he never died. So they would tell this around the campfire. And one night they told this to all the girls, and while they were telling the girls, one of the parts of the story is he would tie the door shuts of their cabins, and so when he was hunting somebody, they would go for safety and they couldn't get in, and then he would steal them. So some of the guys snuck to the girls' cabin and tied the doors shut. And then as the girls were walking back, they were running through the woods, pounding on trees and making growling noises, and all the girls were screaming and they ran to their cabin. It was an all-out panic.
Yeah.
See, that's the fun of
Think
camp.
that through.
So those of you who never went to Bible camp, go.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
No, it's not.
I loved Bible
People
camp.
get kidnapped all the time. I don't know why they let Bible camps exist. That
No,
happens.
great. But I was trying to think of a book that's been based, not like an adult book set in a Bible camp atmosphere. And I couldn't really think of one. I'm sure there's probably one out there.
Yeah.
But I liked looking for unique settings that aren't atypical
Right.
of a novel. And so that was kind of like, let's put a Bible camp.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. So, I grew up, my parents were, worked at a summer camp that I
Sure.
worked at. So
Yeah.
it's not really a Bible camp. It was actual
Yeah.
campground,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
my
make
dad
sure
was,
they carry it so everybody reads it.
my dad was on the board of a Bible camp, and
Okay.
I was a camp counselor and did the whole summer camp thing. And then I married somebody who was from the competitive Bible camp.
Oh, no.
So the whole thing was, if you grow up going to this Bible camp, you're going to find your spouse at this Bible camp. And I found mine at the opposing Bible camp. And so then it was this war, and they were teasing how they weren't going to come to our wedding because we'd betrayed the other camp. It was just kind of fun competition,
Yeah.
But
That's awesome. Oh,
It
how
was cool.
fun. Well, those are great stories. So, let me see here. What can we talk about in this book and not give things away? See, that's the problem. When you have a good book like this, it's like, oh, I should talk. Oh, I can't tell you about that.
right.
We should talk about, oh, I can't tell you about that. So again, you have your dual time.
Correct.
I should ask this because I've often wondered this. Do you find them easier or harder to write, the dual times?
I find them harder.
Okay,
You can kind of whip out one,
right.
but when you're trying to write the dual time and link them together, and some dual time are easier for me because you can write, like if I write just a general dual time and it's not necessarily a mystery, you can
Right.
have people going through parallel journeys. But with the mysteries, I have to figure out ways to link them across decades
Right.
and make it believable. And the internet makes it so hard because you're like, well, all you have to do is a quick Google search and you got that solved in 30 seconds. So now you have to also figure out how to defeat the internet. That's hard.
Yes.
So how do you?
All her books will be set in the 70s from now on.
Right. Like seriously, how do you lose birth records? You don't lose birth records now. They're all digital.
Not now, you're right.
So
Back
you
in the
have
day,
to,
you just burn the building down.
and that's what I did in one of my books.
I know you did.
I burned the building down. I'm like, this is the only way I can get rid of these records. Burn it down.
See, now you know.
So
Mysteries are harder to write in the 2000s.
I added arsony to my list of criminal literary crimes.
I would love to see your search history. I'm sure, well, it might actually scare me,
It would scare you.
but yeah.
I was searching for the book that I'm writing, The Souls of Lost Lake. I was searching for, I'm sorry, this is gross. How long does it take a body to decompose underwater?
Ew.
And I pulled up the article. It was a scientific journal's article on, the bottoms of the lakes, etc., versus sea versus salt versus freshwater versus silt versus sand versus muck, and all the different elements, because it changes depending. So
Sure, I can
not only do you
imagine.
just throw a body in water and say it decomposes, you have to figure out what type of
Yeah.
water.
Well,
It had pictures.
Oh.
It didn't come with a warning. It's a scientific journal. It's not going to put a warning label on it.
No, they just
So-
assume you know.
I'm going through, I'm like, oh. And then I start like looking closer, and I had to do a quick alt tab when my kids came in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't
I
need to
was
see.
reading the comics.
Comics.
That's a
Can
comic.
we read them too, Mom? Nope.
No.
Nope, not these comics.
I'll just shut the computer. So.
Right.
Well, that is all fascinating. So.
Disturbing, but
Well, yeah,
fascinating.
see, will not turn my back on her from now on. Just so you know. So
Just remember, my crimes have all been committed literally.
that's good.
It's all on the
Yeah,
case.
so you get it all out.
I mean, you could actually
Wonderful.
do a background search on me and you won't find anything because I'm really
Well, you've
that
got to delete
timid.
it because you burned the building down.
Well, that's true.
Oh dear. Now we have digressed. So.
Yeah, we usually
but-
do.
Yes, so I am very excited about this new one. I really, really enjoyed it. So,
Yeah, there's a little bit of a Regency flair.
you know, I
To
thought
it.
that too, and I'm like, I didn't know if it was me or not. So
No,
I
in
really
fact, my-
appreciated that. It was
yeah.
kind of a neat part of it.
My publisher noticed that too. She said you kind of almost went Regency, even though it's not.
No, because it's not in the right time.
Right,
period
it's not in the
and
right-
the right country.
Correct, correct. Which, I was this years old when I realized Regency only took place in England. I literally went online
Really?
this year wondering why. Oh, this is so sad. I shouldn't admit this.
No, that's all right.
I did a search trying to figure out why no one writes Regency novels set in the United States.
Well,
Like,
they
why are
didn't
they all
happen
in England?
here.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Let's
oops.
see, what was that? The 1800s? Regency?
Yeah, the early 1800s.
See,
like
we were-
18 up to
yeah.
1830, I think.
We were still settling our country and have time
Right,
for
we were in a
Regency.
mess. We were a mess.
Civil
We were a
War
mess.
was coming. It was all
It was
fine.
just, it was everything. But no, this does have a little bit of that flair though. I did
Yeah.
kind of go toward the Jane Eyre
Yeah,
kind of Moorish feeling, but
Yeah.
setting it up in a different area.
yeah.
And in the States and around the Civil War. And the girl, what's her name? What did I name my character? I remember the hero. He's so brooding.
Which one?
Oh, Adria.
Oh, and then.
Adria is
yeah.
the girl set in the past.
Yes.
She's really troubled. She's really troubled. And
She
the
is.
story starts out where she's basically a survivor of a suicide attempt. And she also struggles with depression, but in a different way. And so that was an interesting thread to kind of weave through that dark, Jane Eyre Wuthering Heights-ish type
Yeah.
of thing. And I also did not, and I don't think this gives away too much, but the hero in one of the timelines struggles with alcoholism.
Yep.
And so
I like that.
it was interesting to put a hero who's really broken into the
Yeah.
hero position. And it wasn't the typical, he's going to conquer it all and move on and conquer.
Yeah.
It was more of they needed each other.
Yes.
And I was trying to show a symbol of how we really need each other in our brokenness.
Yes.
I think so often we wait for each other to heal.
Yeah.
And then I can help you.
Yeah.
Or support you, or you're too much right now for me to handle because you're broken. And you're sucking too much out of me. But that's so often when we need someone the most.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I was kind of going for in there too. So
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
We're gonna do a watch check just because, we're doing great. So,
well, I talk forever. So
oh, well, yeah, we could talk about all kinds of books. So what else? No, one of the things I do like, and this one too, it took me a little while to figure out how to pronounce names, but where do you get these ideas for these names?
which one in
This is
particular?
gonna be a really good story. Well, any of them, because you do have, I like that. You have unique names that make sense. Sometimes you have, I read a book many years ago and one of the main characters' names was Canyon. Okay, that kind of ruined the whole book because it was a weird name to give a
it's kind of a
child,
weird
so,
name, yeah.
but,
I like to try and look for names that are from the time period.
okay,
So what I do from just a logical structural standpoint is I'll look up Social Security censuses. So if so-and-so was born in, if so-and-so is 30 years old in this book, I go 30 years back from that date and look at what some of the most popular names were. And then some of them are just accidents. So Adria's name, a friend of mine said, you should name one of your characters Alexandria, which I liked the name, but I honestly didn't want to type that many letters over and over and over again. And so I'm like, well, Adria is kind of a nice way to shorten that one up. So that's what I did. I
like
put
that.
lots of thought into that one.
You did, I
Mhm.
can tell.
Yeah, I actually did. I think I should have left it though, because it would have made the book look longer.
Oh, I think the book is plenty long.
Yeah, probably.
You know.
And then Mr. Crane, who's one of the characters, is kind of a allusion to, Sleepy Hollow.
I wondered about that.
Yeah.
I did wonder because
Yeah.
it just made me smile. When
I
read
like
that.
Sleepy
I liked
Hollow.
him.
I love that.
He's such a good
But
character.
his, and I'm not going to give away his first name.
Yep.
But throughout most of the book, I wanted to write a book where the hero was always known by his formal name. So she always calls him Mr. Crane.
Yeah.
And so he's Mr. Crane throughout 95% of the book. And that was fun.
Yeah.
And then the primary character in the present day, Kaylee, is my niece.
Oh, how fun.
She's my only niece who reads my books.
Yeah.
So she needed
Wow.
a character named after her.
Definitely. That's how that works.
Yes. So other nieces,
You should read her book.
read them.
And then
I
she
might name a character after you.
might murder you too, but
Well,
that's a whole different
true,
thing.
Yeah. They already figured that. They're used
Yeah,
to
that's
that
why they
one,
don't want to read your book.
Possibly.
Oh, boy, we wandered
Yes.
off into.
But then the
murder.
cat's name's Edgar and Poe. I mean, that's a given.
Yeah.
For me anyway. And her brother's name is Jude.
Yeah,
And I don't know why I picked that name.
but it fits him very
It
well.
just fit him. It was one
Yeah.
of those names that he just sort of kind of named himself.
Yep.
But I have been known to name my characters after a cat that walks by me
Okay.
when I'm riding outside. I'm like, oh, that's how Ivy got named in the house.
Oh,
of Fluff.
really?
We have a cat named Ivy, and I could not figure out what to name the main character. And I'm like, oh, Ivy works. Thanks, Ivy. So I know some people put lots of thought and emotion into like, oh, this name means this, and so because of
No. See, now you know, behind the curtain, you got to see.
Behind the
it.
curtain,
So
Janie's
Jamie's
very
just
shallow.
naming things after her cats.
cats, dogs.
So if one of her main characters is Fluffy, now you know why. So,
Oh, I miss my
oh, she does have a Fluffy.
I do
and
have
I
a-
kind of forgot
Foo.
that.
I actually
so-
have a cat named Fluffy.
And
which
by
I-
the way, if you don't follow her, you should because her cat is beautiful.
Yeah,
So-
and I had to sort of name him Foo, because do you know what it's like to walk into a vet's office and say, what's your cat's name? Fluffy.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. I asked my children, what are you doing to me? Well, he's Fluffy, so his name has to be Fluffy. No.
No. I look like I named him after some Disney movie.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. But yeah, names are fun. Names are a lot of fun.
yeah.
And this one, I wanted the name with the Foxglove Manor. I wanted to name the names a little bit more Englishy sounding to
Okay.
kind of stick with that Regency aura and that Wuthering Heights Jane Eyre-ish aura. So I didn't want to throw in a name that kind of took you out of that story.
Okay.
So that's why Mr. Crane, when we do find out his real name, has such a nice real name.
I like his name.
I do
I
too,
like him.
actually.
You're gonna love Mr. Crane. He's pretty cool. He's a good part of the book.
Dark and brooding.
Right.
Dark
right,
and brooding.
and-
I wrote it dark and brooding.
Right, but you're gonna like him. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
So, we could sit here and talk all day.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is the hook for this book?
Oh boy.
I didn't put her on the spot at all. So
You know,
didn't warn
some
her
of my
about this
books I actually have a hook. Other of my books I have like 4 pages worth to
Ah,
explain it.
yeah.
This is more of that. But honestly, I would say, think lost treasure, and a ghostly mansion.
And it is ghostly.
It's very ghostly, this
Yes.
one. However, for anyone afraid of the spiritual elements, again, the ghosts are always explained. So it's very ghostly. It's very much a treasure hunt. And I would say it's all very gothic, very dark and gothic.
That's a good word for
There's
it.
not a lot of color in this. So when I
No.
write, I see things in color. I don't know if I've
Yeah.
ever explained that.
Yes, you did.
So
But
like
that's okay. Sure
every
you did.
scene has a color, every person has a color that identifies their personality. So even the colors on the books are color schemes that I send to my graphic artists and say, this is the color of the book. And so she actually gets paint chips from me.
Oh, how fun.
I send her paint chips and she tries to stick
Interesting.
with that color.
Yeah.
So the Cliffs of Foxglove Manor to me was always very kind of navyish evergreen with just a little bit of light shining through, kind of like that yellow hope that
Yeah.
kind of comes out. And so most of the characters and most of the story though is that very dark, shadowy, not a lot of
Interesting.
color. In fact, if it was ever a movie, I would see it made almost in black and white.
I thought that too when I was reading it, that
Mm-hmm.
this would make one of those great classic movies where,
Yeah,
like Wuthering Heights,
right.
when you watch it, it's all very dark.
Very dark.
It's very hard to
yeah.
watch that movie because it's very dark.
It is very dark.
So,
Well, and
but-
unlike Wuthering Heights, this one does have a happy ending. So I should
Yes.
clarify that darkness
Yes.
always leads to light.
Yes.
And I do like that about this book too. But again, the Civil War treasure
Ugh.
is, I mean, anybody
Fascinating.
who loves
Fascinating.
history is going to want to actually delve into the real history. In fact, I emailed Laura France and Jocelyn Green, and I sent them my links. And I said, now that I've completely turned real history into a mystery and botched it all, can you take this and write a real historical? Because I would love to see what a real historical author could do with this information.
I think you do fine with the historical, partly because your research is amazing. I mean, the amount of stuff you read to write a believable murder mystery of some sort
Yeah.
is, I mean, that's what makes it real.
Well,
I mean,
and I've always been fascinated. If I had, like, in another life, I would have been in either forensics or criminal psychology.
okay,
And so I read lots of books on criminal psychology. I have textbooks that they use in the
Okay.
universities for that. And I study lots of the FBI profilers books, like the guy who wrote Mindhunter and
Oh.
different things like that. It's just fascinating, but it helps a lot to understand the reasons why a villain will do what he does.
right,
And then a lot of times, once I've developed the villain's psychological, then I can develop their criminal activity from there. Or if I have the criminal activity figured out, then I need to figure out a villain that would do it because of these reasons.
okay,
So the book that I just wrote, without giving anything away, I really had to dive deep into the psychological history because I needed to know what was triggering him to suddenly go from dormant to active.
right,
You know, why would somebody who's serially a criminal of some sort suddenly go quiet?
right.
So, you know, having to learn those
Interesting.
types of things. So I do go places most of you probably wouldn't want to go, but it
Right.
does lend itself to
It lends
us.
itself very, very well to your books, so, I think that's why everybody keeps reading them, because, it takes us places we don't always think about, so I do like that, where your characters, whether it's the criminal or not,
Mhm.
you're very in depth with them, you make them, and I hate to say it about a criminal, but realistic.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things, you know, it's funny when I started writing books as a kid, the one thing that I missed in some of the novels that I would read is that there wasn't anything that I felt would change my life.
Oh.
And that was
interesting.
never meant as a criticism because
Right.
so much of novels are meant just for entertainment purposes.
Yep.
But for me personally, I always want to take something away that can potentially affect who I am as a person, you know, growth, personality, how I view the Lord, how I view my faith, how I view other people. And so that's something that I do with each one of my books. I pick a theme word.
Okay.
So like with The House on Foster Hill, the word was hope.
Oh,
And so everything points to hope. Like, how do
Yeah.
you find hope in the darkness? How do you find hope when there's no answers? How do you find hope in
Fascinating.
grief? With Reckoning at Gossamer Pond, it was grace,
which makes sense.
which makes
Yep,
sense
perfect
because
sense.
you have people who have really screwed up and now they're getting judged for it.
Yep.
Curse of Misty Wayfarer was all about finding belonging.
Yep. Yep, I can see
Because
that.
you don't get belonging when you're mentally ill.
No.
There's no place of belonging, and if nothing else, you're ostracized. Haunting at Bonaventure Circus was all about being seen,
Sure.
and being seen as who you are and not as somebody that you should be. And Echoes Among the Stones, it wasn't so much a word on that one as it was just the concept of how do you reconcile grief. Because there's
Right.
two very different ways you can approach grief.
Yep.
And one can lead to a more bitter life, and one can lead to a life of memories and the memory of the loved ones and letting their legacies affect you,
Right.
but also continuing forward. And then on the Cliffs of Foxglove Manor, that's just all about togetherness.
Which also makes sense.
Just coming together
That's kind
and
of
fighting
cool.
for
Now I'm
each
gonna have to
other.
read them again to see all that through there, because they do, they all
Yeah.
make sense, that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
And so I try and tie all of that into everything that happens, kind of points back to that general theme, because that's just how my mind's worked since a kid. I want it like something I can take away, and it's not necessarily blazing in the books, but it's there hopefully underlining and threaded through it. So
Yeah. I don't need it hit me over the head, but
right,
I like when it's just something I can
so
figure out and
Yeah.
do. One question too is about your research.
Mhm.
Do you have an idea for a storyline first? Do you start your research and go, oh, well, maybe this is,
It kind of is a mix.
oh,
Sometimes it's something I'm studying, like with Fox Club Manor, it's my daughter watching the History Channel.
yeah,
And I'm like, oh, okay, that would be cool. So then what are components I could pull in? So that one really came from history. But Haunting at Bonaventure Circus was all just boom in my head. So that one just came, it wasn't really inspired by anything. It was just there.
interesting.
Echoes Among the Stones was a dream.
Really?
It really was.
Wow.
So I had a very vivid dream one night, which is weird.
Yeah,
Well, I dream vividly, but for it to actually make sense is a different story.
that's true.
But the scene in Echoes Among the Stones where the grandmother, Mumsy, is hounding Aggie, her granddaughter, about finding a husband
Yep.
was the dream.
Isn't that interesting? And you knew their names.
That they were named that in the dream.
See, you can't make that up.
And because I don't even like the name Aggie. And I apologize to anybody whose name that is. I like it now,
Yeah,
but I didn't like it before.
yeah.
And I was like, I can't use this name. I don't like this name.
Isn't that interesting?
But her name was Aggie. It was
It
just
had to
from
be
the dream.
Aggie.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So,
So it's just weird.
yeah,
A little bit of everything.
yeah. See, again, behind the curtain of what it's like to be a writer, they're all a little crazy.
A lot of, at least I am.
No.
I'll
that's
wear
all
it proudly.
right. And then we get we get the books to read. So awesome. We are looking forward to releasing this book soon.
Mhm.
We look forward to 2022 where we get another one, and
Yes.
hopefully on to the future we go.
On to the
So
future we go. Yes.
we
there's
will
more
keep
coming.
reading them. So thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. It's a little bit different setting for us, but it's nice when they walk in the doors. It just changes the pace of everything around here. So we appreciate that.
That's
We
fun.
appreciate your support of Baker Book House.
Oh,
It's
I
been
love you guys.
awesome. I gotta tell you,
Love you guys.
she's amazing. So we really appreciate that.
Anybody who has ordered from Baker after I've told them you will order from Baker. No, seriously, all I hear is how you guys package your books. They say it's like we get a little present in the mail because they're wrapped in paper.
Yep.
And it's so vintage. Like
Yep.
I like getting them. Like I open the cardboard, which is very modern. You have to. But then you open it up and there's these brown paper wrapped books. And they're just wrapped with love. And
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know, it's brown paper, but it gives a lot of joy.
Well,
And
thank
it's
you.
something that you don't get from these massive places out there.
Yeah.
Who don't wrap their books and they throw them in an envelope and they mail them to you and it goes
Just willy-nilly.
and then they're bent when you get them and it's sad. So sad.
I will let our shipping department know that.
Yes,
you
please
approve.
do. No, I'm actually serious when I say that though. It's
Thank you.
and I've heard lots of feedback from
I
readers
think
about
it is
that.
amazing to me.
You wouldn't.
I
think-
shop from Baker and I love their packing. Okay.
I know, you
So
wouldn't
thank
think
you
so,
for
but
that
yeah,
too.
yeah.
You know what, to be honest with you, it's nice to hear it for our shipping because they work so much
They
behind
do.
the
Oh my
scenes.
gosh.
Nobody ever thinks of them.
And
so,
more so now than ever, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, they work a lot. So
I
they've been
can
setting records in the back, so.
I bet.
Packages.
I
so,
bet.
yeah.
So, and the fact that you're keeping up with the love and care in each package is what's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't shortchanged any of that.
No,
So,
we haven't gone and cut a corner. So.
yeah. But
So again, thank you.
yes,
Thank you for supporting Baker Book House and bakerbookhouse.com. Go and order Jamie's book right now. You're going to want to read it. It's going to be a wonderful one to read this summer while you're on vacation in a woods, preferably overlooking a lake somewhere.
Right.
It'll be perfect for you. So, and then make sure you bring all the other ones along too, and you won't sleep. It'll be perfect.
right.
So,
It'd be great.
and then you can wait and not go camping next year when you read the other one.
These are the things dreams are made of. Dun dun dun.